Well, hello, that's me again. Today is March 20th, 2025. It is Thursday, right? So it is Thursday. And I want to start with what is everybody's talking about, that it didn't take long. And I read all the time, comments under my videos and obviously in my blog, and people, and I understand they're good people. They worry, they have their own reasons to be very uncomfortable with what they observe sometimes. But point is, guys, let me reiterate it again here in person, so to speak, that whenever anybody says that, oh yeah, United States will cheat, or that Israel will cheat, or what have you, and they all worry that Putin is naive, and Russians, those poor, sods, who do not know what is going on outside, the borders of Russian Federation. Let me put it this way. Mr. Putin, or rather collective Putin, which is of course Security Council of Russia, is staffed with the incredibly competent people, and they are briefed by one of the best, if not the best, intel services and military, definitely the best military in the world, on the situation outside, and including of course by the foreign ministry. So they are situationally, tactically, operationally, strategically aware on the levels we cannot even conceive. So whenever anybody says that, oh my God, they're gonna cheat, well, of course they're gonna cheat. Russians are not idiots, but obviously the modus operandi of Putin's government, if you wish, or Putin's cabinet is such that it is very diligent, it is very sequential, if you wish, and yeah, Russians do their thing. And as we already know, it didn't take long after this so-called meaningless ceasefire, which was, well, it wasn't ceasefire really, it was truce or what have you, between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump about the ceasefire in relation to the some energy installations in Ukraine and Russia. Well, guess what? Obviously, it was immediately broken by Ukraine, and yeah, it's just. If you think that Russians didn't anticipate this, I have a breach to sell you. So as you can see yourself, Ukraine immediately broke Putin-Trump deal on energy targets, Moscow, and Moscow was anticipating this. So they managed to hit one of those, smaller, what you call storages for the oil facility in the Russia Krasnodar region, and actually this oil belongs to United States. And it's owned by American investors. So the overnight attack involved 3 kamikaze drones directed against a station near the village of Kavkazskaya, the ministry reported, Russian Defense Ministry. The facility is used to transfer crude from rail transported tanks to a pipeline operated by the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, CPC, an international firm that counts US giant Chevron and Mobil among its partners. So yeah, and there you go. Now we have to ask the question, where is this ceasefire Trump talks about? There will be no ceasefire. A special military operation continues and will continue until Russia meets its objectives. And I repeat it ad nauseam because many people still don't get it. I mean, they still believe all this, fluffy rhetoric and pathos-ridden statement. But here it is, Maria Zakharova, the Russian Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, no less, and here she is about the military aid. There you go, today, fresh, there you go. The Russian Foreign Ministry commented, the supply of American weapons to Kyiv runs counter to the statements coming from Washington. Of course it does. About the intention to achieve a diplomatic settlement of the Ukrainian crisis, said the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. On Tuesday, the Pentagon told RIA News that the United States continue to supply military aid to Ukraine after the pause introduced earlier in March. The question is, which I repeat ad nauseam, and you can watch my latest video with Nima, which was yesterday. So United States remains and will continue to remain in its present form an existential enemy of Russia and Russian people. So all those talks and fluffy statements by Mr. Trump or whoever about stopping military aid and wanting to achieve peace, quote unquote, it's all garbage, of course. The question is now about the diplomatic game, and the situation with Mr. Trump has to save his face now. As you remember, it was 24 hours he would stop the war, then it was something else, 2 weeks or what have you. So you just read yourself all those, grandiose statements as very typical of Mr. Trump. But here we are. United States cannot extricate itself from this conflict because it will mean, of course, as we all know, and as I repeat ad nauseam, and I will continue to repeat it no matter how people protest against that this is all about United States trying to find itself some type of the off-ramp, because it was militarily humiliated, and essentially the NATO has been militarily destroyed because suddenly it was exposed as a well, paper tiger, because it is. And I made the video last time, and I will continue to talk about it today, and to a degree of the complete delusion and, for example, panic in the European capitals. Those people are really desperate. And so we have this issue which we need to discuss a little bit, precisely about what has been happening around this whole conflict, and obviously the panic. And one of the indicators or indications of some rather interesting shifts mentally we have in this place. It is, of course, the Hill, it is the rag, it's establishment rag, which allegedly has its own, very serious, sources somewhere in Capitol Hill, and yeah, but okay, it is establishment. And suddenly we have 2 days ago the opinion piece, which otherwise would never have appeared in the Hill even half a year ago. So, and it is by Alan Cooperman, and this opinion piece, but sadly, Trump is right on Ukraine, he writes. It is a very interesting piece. You can easily find it. It is free, and you can read it whole. I don't need to read it whole because obviously I was preaching this from the get-go. In fact, what Mr. Cooperman arrives to, go to my blog and, go to the first statements or posts in my blog from 2014, and you will understand everything I was trying to convey. And here it is. And Cooperman writes that he rarely agrees with Trump, but his latest controversial statements about Ukraine are mostly true. They seem preposterous only because Western audiences have been fed a steady diet of disinformation about Ukraine for more than a decade. Well, hello! It is time to set the record straight on 3 key points that illuminate why Ukrainians and former President Joe Biden, not merely Russian President Vladimir Putin, bear significant responsibility for the outbreak and perpetuation of war in Ukraine. And so he talks about, this overwhelming forensic evidence and things like that. Let me spare you the pain of reading what anybody who followed my media activity for the last 10 years and who read my books and who read my blog. But the point is, United States supports neo-Nazi regime in Kyiv, period. It is run by Nazis. Mr. Zelensky is merely avatar. He is a puppet. Well, moron, but still, he is a puppet which is used by CIA, SAS, for example, London, and he is surrounded essentially and driven to basically militarily insane decisions by the NATO and by the neo-Nazis, which, for example, people from CIA and MI6 love. They love Nazis because, as long as they kill Russian children, rape women, and commit atrocities, they applaud it. This is the only thing they know, because obviously the terrorism and that type of activity is the sign of the weak. because obviously militarily United States and combined NATO and combined West are weak, and of course they never follow the advice of those people like yours truly and others that essentially militarily NATO is not ready to fight the real war, and even their proxy will be utterly demolished. And so suddenly this Mr. Cooperman says, oh yeah, that was true. They're Nazis. Obviously, we could never have foreseen that. Well, Russian economy is much larger than anybody who ever, tried to pretend that, it's somehow smaller than the economy of Netherlands. Well, hello. Welcome to the real world. And as the result, well, it's not really Mr. Trump speaking. The United States always knew it. When I say knew, quote unquote, is obviously people on there which deal with the everyday realities, and intel, real intel, such as some people of the middle level CIA or the Defense Intelligence Agency, or even probably some people in State Department, they knew what was happening. The main secret was to cover up what is happening in reality. And that is why American political top, and not only American, Western political top, were absolutely convinced that just, as I already stated many times, the strategy, or strategery rather, because nobody can do strategy in the Western world, was that, oh yeah, our best proxy ever, which is essentially NATO army, let's kick those Russians into the gonads, and then see how Putin's regime collapse. This is the kindergarten level, and as the result, suddenly, yeah, the chickens came home to roost. And this is what Cooperman discusses in his article, but this is just as one of the indications. Reality is much worse, and that is why they panic. And obviously, it goes without saying, or rather, I have to repeat it all the time. United States is not stopping supporting Ukraine. It simply can't, because those people, in Washington, many of them are still living in their, with their heads up the clouds, or rather heads up their asses, because they are very incompetent and very misinformed people. Most of them are. And so now we have the situation with Europeans. Europeans have been absolutely spooked by what is happening, and Mr. Trump rhetoric. There is very little real action, but Trump loves to talk. He is showman primarily. And so suddenly Denmark, oh my gosh, and this is what I was talking about. Denmark, critical choice, European SMPT versus US Patriots. Suddenly the Danish government is, basically soiling its underwear, and they for some reason think that somehow Russians are about to attack, and then, we have nothing to defend ourselves with, except, of course, the very limited choice about that Denmark is working intensively to strengthen its air defense. It's not going to strengthen its air defense, but they have two options between the SMPT, French-Italian system, which failed miserably in special military operation, and of course American Patriot, which failed even more miserably than this thing. Well, the only reason it failed more miserably because it was more numerous, and it's been, destroyed by Russians in the pretty much all the time. So, and they still think that wasting money on that somehow gonna close their airspace. Well, I have a bridge to sell to them, but the point is Russians are not interested, really. Why would Russians attack, Denmark for some unknown reason? But if Russians decide to attack Denmark, of course, nothing is gonna help it. And here we come to the point of to a degree of the insanity and imbecility Western capitals are, basically this is normal modus operandi in the combined West today, to take some moron and promote it as the military expert, or promote is like this guy, for example. This is one of those Russian specialist experts. If you take a look attentively at this, is what, for example, Defense News uses. Look at this guy. His name is Maxim Starchak. Maxim Starchak is a Russian correspondent for Defense News. He previously worked as an editor for the Russian Defense Ministry. Yeah. And as an expert for the NATO Information Office in Moscow. So the guy has pretty much, intel services, smeared all over him. And yeah, if you take a look attentively what he is and at his CV, here's his CV. So here, look at this. Maxim Starchak, nuclear policy, strategic weapons industry in Russia. As you can see yourself, he received the magister, which is master's degree of the international security and integration. I have no idea what it is. He also has the certificate Summer School of Non-Proliferation for Young Specialists from Russia and CIA's countries. Well, guess what? It's a peer center. It's all those NGOs and USAID, all those CIA and MI6 run type organization. And of course, he goes and Moscow State Institute of International Relations certificate postgraduate course of the European Studies Institute. In other words, the guy is really, he doesn't have real education, let alone real military education to have any real input on the strategy and real international relations as they are shaped by what is the foundation of it all. And all this was, although sometimes it was, obviously there was no term for it, but today it is called correlation of forces and means. So there you go. These are the specialists. And guess what? I already spoke about the fact that there is a dumpster sewer of the Western journalism, and then there is a special category for British. This is the type of people who still cannot come to the, to grips with the reality that they are nobodies. They're literally nobodies, militarily, economically, but here it is. This is the have been reprinted from Times, no less, London Times. But it's mail online, gets us into this mood. And I will explain to you, this is the level actually of expertise which also is revolving, so to speak, or being spread in in Parliament or on the Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. This is the level. So don't look at it that it is Daily Mail. Actually, the original is from The Times, which for some reason British think that it somehow is not tabloid. Everything what is done in London or around is tabloid. It's the Jerry Springer, on steroids, basically. However, look at this. There is something now which is called threat of Russian missile attack on Britain is high since Cold War, with fleet of Putin rocket-laden subs and warships of Norway posing acute threat to UK mainland, report warns. I don't know why they say specifically of Norway, because any Russian carrier of the 3M14, let alone 3M14M cruise missiles, let alone strategic missiles, submarines can launch at the United Kingdom, not even off Norway, but even from Siberian, they call the Siberian seas, which constitute the Arctic Ocean. But the threat of Russian missile attack on Britain is the highest since the end of the Cold War, a report. Well, they do not really refer to the report until it is, later in this article. It is a very interesting organization, and evidently they consider it to be as smart as Chatham House, which is very low bar to clear. So, and they say, Russian Northern Fleet, which carries 800 cruise missiles, including ones like the caliber capable of hitting a target more than 1,500 miles away, could be used to launch an attack on Britain. Well, if Russians really will decide to launch an attack on Britain, Russians will be launching it depending on the scenario of the escalation. They could use, obviously, calibers. They could use KH-101, which has the range of 4,500 kilometers, or can use the KH-BD, which is 8,500 plus kilometers from the strategic bombers, such as Tu-95MC and Tu-160. And all kinds of other carriers. And so they, for some reason, say that they could. Of course, Russia can. I mean, it's just a matter of how Britain behaves itself and how NATO wants to go down in history. And so they continue. They continue to, basically inflate this threat. But look at this. Other European countries have already bolstered their air defenses, with Germany signing a £3 billion deal to buy Israel's Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile system, considered one of the best in the world. No, I don't know by whom it's considered. It was absolutely, overrun by Iranians, and it performed pathetically, actually. It's not capable, really, of intercepting any kind of the serious salvo. and then there is another thing. They just write about cruise missiles. All those Arrow 3, they're absolutely useless against any kind of the cruise missile, let alone hypersonic weapons. And I don't know why they even put this thing here. But then, of course, comes this magnificent statement. Look at this. While they worry about this whole thing, here it is. That's the organization. According to Council on Geostrategy, Russia has a limited amount of ballistic missiles capable of reaching the UK. As range increases, the British Isles will increasingly come under potential threat, the authors reportedly warned. I looked at it and I'm like, what do they mean by limited amount of course it is limited. It is limited by the START treaty. The arms limitation, Russian and American warheads, they float around 1,500 or 1,700 per entity, so to speak, per Russia and United States. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm doing this from the top of my head. Britain doesn't even factor there together with France as any serious nuclear powers. So of course it's limited, but let's talk a little bit about this whole range capable of reaching the UK. Read this phrase. Well, I have news for these guys. Who are those guys? Because you have to ask yourself a question, who really runs all those council on geostrategy and things like that? If you take a look attentively at those people, look at this. This is the people who Times considers them experts. Here's one of this. James Rogers, main areas of expertise, Britain's global posture, strategic advantage, sea power, blah, 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 blah. James Rogers is co-founder and director of research of the Council on Geostrategy. So here, Indo-Pacific, all blah, 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 blah. He holds a PhD, essentially, or master's, whatever, in contemporary European studies from the University of Cambridge, and an award-winning BS Econ with honors in international politics and strategic studies from University of Wales. Alrighty then we have Victoria Starich. Judging by her name, she's either Ukrainian or Belarusian, and guess what? She holds an MA in Intelligence and International Security from King's College London, and BA in Political Science from Vilnius University. And you read about those people, and you begin to ask your question, who the hell are those people? They are the inputs which, for example, some average moron who is elected into the Chamber of Commons in London reads. Because most of them who go there, they are humanities educated or dumbed down, depending on the point of view, in all kinds of the allegedly elite, there's nothing elite schools for Oxford or what have you. And so here it is. Those people do not understand pretty much anything about strategy, okay? Despite the fact that they are, like Maxim Starchak, put forth all kinds of their, credentials. Well, I have news. Any Russian strategic missile can reach UK from anywhere in the world. Why it is so? Let's give you one example of that type of submarine. You see, This is Project 955A Barei class strategic missile submarine, which carries 16 Bulava sea-launched ballistic missiles. There is a whole other story about Bulava, which is an amazing missile, but let's take a look. Essentially, what do we have in terms of Bareis? Go back to numbers which I spoke about many times before. As you can see yourself, this is the Bareis, which each of them carries 16 missiles, unlike it is with the royal naming strategic missile submarines, which go pretty much empty. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so already operational. And as you can see yourself, on the Pacific Fleet, we have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 active. Why Pacific Fleet? Well, because those morons from this Geostrategy, whatever the shyster organization, they count for some reason only Northern Fleet. Well, let me show you a little bit of the geography. Here it is. As you can see yourself, the range from the, let's say, one of the bastions for the Russian strategic missile submarines of the Pacific Fleet, not Northern, Pacific Fleet, is of course the Sea of Okhotsk, where this bastion is, and they can launch from there anywhere, essentially from the Okhotsk Sea. And here's the distance for to United Kingdom. It is, the total distance is 7,604 kilometers. Okay, let's calculate what do we have. Well, we have there 16 missiles of Bulava class. Bulava class is, this is the data from Mr. Solomonov himself. Now, no other the guy who actually created with the Institute of Thermodynamics or Thermal Technology, designed and built this machine, which is RSM-56 Bulava. The Bulavas is a 36.8 ton, 3-stage solid fuel missile with a range of at least 9,300 kilometers, and can carry between 6 and 10 nuclear capable multiple independent re-entry vehicles, which have an explosive yield of between 100 and 150 kilotons each. And so, obviously, if you carry the more warheads, let's say 10 instead of 6, your range will probably suffer a little bit, but at least 9,300 kilometers range for Bulava, which is being carried by Bareis, is, well, it's the range when it has 10 warheads. Well, guess what? There is another very unpleasant thing about this. These are not exactly ballistic missiles. Well, they are ballistic missiles, but they very often launch on the suppressed trajectories to allow all those warheads to become essentially hypersonic weapons which are capable to maneuver. You cannot intercept them. There is no technology in the West which can do that, period. And so as the result, if we begin to calculate that even Pacific Fleet Bulavas, when launched from the Barei class submarines, well, what do we have? 16 missiles times 10 MIRVs. Okay, 160 MIRVs, right? A single salvo. And of course, then you have 5 of those missiles. Well, 800 warheads, hypersonic warheads with Mach 27. Well, good luck intercepting that. Just from the Pacific Fleet alone. The same probably true is for the Northern Fleet, and this is just the naval-based, well, salvo. Then, of course, we have the other thing, which is, of course, Russia's strategic missile forces, and all of them, those strategic missile forces, for example, which are located within, let's say, Eastern Siberia, and they are mobile. Well, take a look at what is the ground-based element of Russian strategic missile forces. Here is the very famous RS-24 Yars. It's a mobile missile. What do we have with our Yars missile, and what it can launch for us? Well, it has the range of at least 8,000 kilometers, at least. It can carry between 3 and 4 MIRVs, also maneuvering MIRVs, which is hypersonic essentially. When you take a look at it, well, how many of those Russians have? Well, they have 154 of those mobile complexes. And then, of course, Russians have the silo-based complexes, including still being in use RS-26 Voyevoda, also known as Satan, and Russians already deploying RS-28 Sarmat, which is, they call it Satan 2, but it's much worse than that. It is capable to launch 10 avant-gardes. So, yeah, limited. Well, essentially a single salvo from the Pacific Fleet submarine, strategic missile submarine, can obliterate the whole of the, well, pretty much most of the United Kingdom. But the problem is that obviously Russia has no intent whatsoever to do that, because Moscow, unlike London, are responsible people, and actually they are humanists. And they will not allow to do what, for example, many in British society, and especially in British press, and especially in those so-called think tanks and MI6 applauded, of killing or raping, committing all kinds of atrocities. They are weak. They are pathetic. And that is why they are so worried. But Russians not going to attack them unless Russia is attacked. But those people from the Geostrategy Council, they have no clue about Russian military doctrine, and especially Russian nuclear doctrine, which defines actually parameters of the use of the nuclear weapons. And we're not talking, of course, when we talk about the salvo, of such things like Oreshnik, which is now in the serial production, and other types of the weapon systems, which West, first, it doesn't have anything comparable, and it has no ability to intercept anything of it. Nothing. Zilch. And when you talk about this, you have to understand this all factors into what I was talking about in my last video. Nuclear forces. It's not just carriers of the, let's say, nuclear charges or multiple independent reentry vehicles. It is also the whole system of the early warning, which obviously Europe doesn't have. Only the United States has in NATO that, and Europeans will not be able to successfully develop and, well, basically deploy this type of the system. And it is, of course, anti-missile capabilities. NATO's anti-missile, including anti-ballistic missile capabilities, are pathetic. They are absolute myth. Most of it is garbage, which was very expensive. And it is like the, for example, Aegis Ashore with Mk-41 vertical launch systems in the Vasallo and in Poland. They are used not for those SM-6 and SM-2 missiles, which will intercept nothing. They are not capable of intercepting anything serious. It is all primarily to, at the time of volition, to load those cells with, let's say, tomahawks. Which is the, strategic, well, it's sort of strategic weapon to attack Russia. That's the only thing that's the only reason they are there. In terms of their performing their anti-missile capability functions, not even close. And so this is what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And this is just kind of, I'm trying to factor in those things about the situation with special military operation and also the military capability in what really matters, which is the foundation of this all, nuclear deterrent and, well, it's dual deterrent on the Russian side. It is both nuclear and conventional. And that is why I wanted to show you the type of the morons who are supposed to be the experts. They are not experts. Those experts who are real experts in the West, they haven't been allowed anywhere near their influence, anywhere near their levels of power. And now, Europeans are soiling their underwear. Well, let them. As per Russian-American relations, as I already stated, nothing going to change. Russians will simply finish off what's left of Ukraine. And before I go, I just wanted to show you you see, this is the today's. It's kind of back to, not back, it never stopped actually, to killing them. And if anybody wants to see visual representation of all this horror for Ukrainian side, or whatever is left of it, well, you're more than welcome to browse all kind of the Telegram channels. There are so many videos about what is being done to all those, best American and best NATO proxies. So this is it for today, guys, and as always, in the end, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee too. That will allow me to continue to do what I'm doing. Well, thank you, and have a nice rest of the week, guys. Bye-bye.